Welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and Giallo enthusiasts. This is Tanner Leeser, your host for all things Giallo here on The King and Giallo, and this is another unscripted talking head movie review. I just got finished watching the 1972 Giallo film, The Only True Giallo, directed by Renato Polselli. This is a wild one. This is easily one of the more unique and weird, but very fittingly Giallo films. I'm trying to find my words for this movie. So let's get right into it. I won't try and take too much of your time. I won't give spoilers for this one. I'll talk more about it in the Jolly Tally when that comes up. But here's what the plot, according to IMDb, is a respected psychologist who regularly works with the police becomes a suspect in a series of gruesome murders of young women. So it stars Mickey Hargitay, who is Dr. Herbert Lyutak, and then his wife is played by Rita Calderoni, and that's Marzia. And then we have Inspector Edwards is played by Raul Lovecchio. He's billed as Raul, just Raul, which that was hilarious seeing that in the opening credits, just Raul. But yeah, so gosh, where do I begin with this? Let me say that this is kind of strangely a combination of Hatchet for the Honeymoon, Death Laid an Egg, and a little bit of the French sex murders in terms of, we know our main character, Dr. Lyutak, I'm just going to call him Herbert because that name just doesn't really roll off for me. Herbert is a killer, like Hatchet for the Honeymoon. So we know he's a killer, and then he gets, by the way, this first kill we see is awkward as all hell, and not awkward as in it's like not handled well. It's very uncomfortable. And real quick, I will say that Polselli directing this movie versus like French Sex Murders, which is the movie I covered before this one, they both have a weird oddness about them, but Polselli, you can tell there's a vision and he executes it. So I like that. But Herbert gets picked up for this murder. He gets fingered by this bartender who recognized him. And immediately I thought the bartender was going to be the future killer because he seemed really excited by watching this man pick up this young girl. And something about it was like, I think he's kind of wishes he could do this too. I think he's going to take over. But Herbert gets arrested. He's interrogated, but he's buddies with the inspector because Herbert is a psychologist, and I think they developed a friendship because he taught psychology classes that worked with the police department. And so Edwards has a hard time believing that Herbert could really be guilty. And then, but there's been 7 murders of young women beforehand. And then this next murder that happens to take place while he's in custody. And so Edwards is like, well, it can't be him, so let's let him go. And what follows is Herbert is working with the police as well as this valet named Croqueta to try and catch the killer, and to catch this new killer, the second killer, because Herbert keeps he has to basically go off of the whole idea of like, well, there's a second killer, a copycat. I'll just lead the police to that person because then I can get away with it. But there's some humorous bits. So early on, he confides to his wife Marzia that he's got problems, he's impotent, and he thinks it would be best if he could just leave her and give her the freedom to pursue a happy life. And she's way too madly in love with him to let him go. And they have a very awkward sex scene where he tries to bring in some S&M elements, and he like hurts her with something. I don't know what it is. If anybody knows, please let me know. But it looks like a spyglass, and he just drags it across her back, and it's like scraping her, cutting her. I don't know. But I will say, in terms of the sex and the eroticism, this movie has a lot. It's got lesbianism, it's got S&M, it's got multiple partners. And the way Polselli shoots it is very voyeuristic, very sexploitative, exploitive. I don't know. But there's a lot of focusing on body parts and a lot of focusing on like the downstairs. And so I'll say it's going to be very hard to do the Jolly Tally and show clips. So here's your warning now. I probably am just gonna have to like blur entire frames, because there was so many instances I was watching this movie like, dude, I don't know how I'm gonna be able to show this or even cover this without it getting instantly age restricted or something. But murders are occurring, and Herbert is working with these detectives. There's like 3 or 4 of them, as well as Croqueta, this valet. And he, at one point, he meets another girl at the park, and he knows that there's going to be a murder there in this one spot. And then while he's meeting this girl and the inspectors are there along with Croqueta, this other girl gets stabbed. And so now they're like, okay, who is it? Well, we know it's not Herbert. We know it's not, some of these inspectors, but they throw a lot of shade onto Croqueta. And I gotta say, I never really assumed it was going to be him. Something about the guy I just found very likable. He was very funny. He had a lot of times where he would speak, where he would drop a word in English in there, a word that doesn't translate. I don't know, but I really like that guy. But God, also the title for this movie is very fitting, because at least 3 characters are going crazy. And so Delirium, there are some crazy, they're not really hallucinations, but they're like nightmare sequences, delirious sequences, I guess you could say, that I honestly, I struggle to find any other word to describe them other than Lynchian. And I know that some people probably hate me for even comparing David Lynch to Polselli, but they were so bizarre, and they were very psychosexual and very sexual, but I don't know, just the way they were done was very interesting. The more this movie went on, so the first act, I was on board. I really liked it. Second act, I felt it started to drag a little bit, and it was kind of all over the place in terms of, I was really struggling to figure out who I thought this second killer could be. I still thought it was this first person, but that person never came back. And so it felt like, well, it's probably not them, because it's not like we're seeing them in little scenes here and there. I never really suspected any of the inspectors, even though there was like 3 of them, and they're all in like pedestrian clothes, which took me a hot minute to really be like, wait, who are all these guys? Why are all these guys volunteering to help? And then like 40 minutes in, 50 minutes in, I'm like, these are all inspectors. Okay, I'm crazy. Croqueta, I never really thought it was him, but the movie does have instances where it's trying to throw some of the suspicion onto him, but like I said, I just never felt it was going to be him. And then this is sort of a spoiler, they kind of kill him off. Kind of. And so as we're going on, I'm like, okay, well, the second killer can't be Herbert, obviously, because we've seen murders happening when he's literally somewhere else. And then we have his wife, Marzia, is slowly going crazy after he like handed her a letter breaking up with her, and then they don't break up, and then they have the really awkward sex. But from that point on, she's been becoming delirious. And she's played by Rita Calderoni, who was in Quiet Place in the Country, the pseudo Giallo by Elio Petri out in the late 60s with Franco Nero, which is also a very psychological type Giallo movie. This one is very psychological. And then Marzia has a friend, Joaquine, I think that's her name, and they're very close. And there's another woman who gets attacked, and while she's being attacked, Croqueta like is peering through holes, and he's watching her being I gotta be careful how I word this, but he's watching her be attacked, and the way it's filmed is really, it's one of those types of examples where I'm like, I don't know how much of this I'll be able to show. I don't know how much of this I'll even be able to describe when I do the Jolly Tally. But we're watching that, and so again, I'm like, okay, well, it can't be him because he's back here watching it happen. But that woman survives, and she's being looked over by Marzia and Joaquine. I think that's her name, how you say it. And these 2 girls are kind of going through a lot. I was like, what is going on? Did they accidentally get drugged? But as this movie is ebbing on, I start thinking, it's got to be one of these 2 women, which for a Giallo, very par for the course, but it didn't feel quite right because in these other murder scenes, it really seemed like the body, the person doing the killing, was a man, but that could always just be a fake Shemp actor who's doing it who is a man. But I'm watching these killings, like, it feels like it's got to be a guy, but they're not really giving us any suspects other than that first person I thought, who we haven't seen since, Croqueta, who for some reason I just never suspected it was him, or maybe it's one of the inspectors. And I never ruled anybody out totally, but I was struggling to find people that I could really lock on and say, okay, chips are in, this is who I think it is. But I did kind of think, okay, it's got to be Marzia or Joaquine. But I won't say whether, I won't say who it was. Perhaps I was right. What else can I say about this movie? God, it's so crazy. It's so all over the place, but it's not too wacky. Some people might think it's so bad it's good. I honestly didn't think it was bad. And the music was good. The directing was good. The writing was all over the place, but not in a bad way. The acting was also over the top. Mickey Hargitay, Mickey Hargitay was Mr. Universe in his past, and so he's not quite an actor, but he does fine enough. There's a lot of over-the-top facial expressions he makes, though. Rita Calderoni, really, like, her character is just going crazier and crazier as it goes on, which also made me think, okay, it can't be her. Maybe, but gosh, see, the movie was doing a good balance of making her so crazy that it felt like, it can't be her, but also a little bit of, maybe it is her, because they haven't put suspicion on her. They're just making her very crazy. They're just making her, like, fall apart mentally. But anyways, her performance is also very over the top, but there was a moment where she was just kind of snapping and a tear came out of her eye, and I thought, okay, that's not bad. But yeah, I'm like struggling to find words for this. It was I will say the third act, I was drawn in. I kind of was all over the place in the second act, but third act I came back and I was in. I was like, all right, we got like 30 minutes left. We're going to figure out who this is. And so I did enjoy it, and there was a sequence where the three characters, Herbert, Marzia, and Joaquine. Watch as I find out that that's not actually how I say her name, but forgive me. I can't be bothered right now to stop and figure it out. But they're walking onto the roof, and the music was really good, really like crazy, as Marzia's character is just going insane. And then there's a part where then they're coming down from the roof and the music comes back, and it really, really good. And yeah, I don't want to spoil the reveal on this one right now, but I will give my thoughts on it when I give my thoughts at the end of the Jolly Tally. I'll just say that I guess I kind of guessed what was going on, but the movie did a good job of just throwing a fair amount at you that it didn't do a rug pull. I'll say that. It didn't do something where it was like, how the hell would I've ever have guessed that? It was, it did a good job of setting everything up. So kudos there to the writers, to Polselli, who, by the way, Renato Polselli also co-wrote Psych Out for Murder, and I really enjoyed Psych Out for Murder as well. In terms of directing Giallo, this is the only like true Giallo. He's got at least 3 other movies that I don't even know if you'd call them Giallo adjacent, but they're sort of pseudo. I don't know. That's just based off of what I've learned about them, but I haven't seen them, so I couldn't tell you. And one of them, I guess, is a lost film anyway. But yeah, the kills are fine. There's a really cool instance where a woman is killed in a bathtub, and then the body is left in the windowsill, and when the inspectors find it, it's like rigged in a way that it falls out and falls down to the floor below. That was really cool. And I was thinking, how am I going to give points for a fall when the person was already dead? So I'll probably do half points for that. But anyways, I'm trying to think if I had any other thoughts, anything else I wanted to share about it. I can't really think of anything right now, so I guess that's all I'll say. But yeah, the movie is very unique. but at the same time, it wasn't so unique that it feels pseudo Giallo adjacent. It's like, no, it very much still is. It still has the killer with the black gloves. The killer had probably my favorite gloves I've ever seen in a Giallo. They were black, and then they had, I guess you'd call it a gauntlet. Pull it down was like brown. It was like brown, black. I don't know. I just thought those gloves were pretty cool. Other than that, yeah, no, that's all I've got to say. So thank you for watching. I will give you my prediction for the Jolly Tally. There was a lot of nudity. There was a lot of everything in this movie, I'll say. There was many AZ things that were missing, but gosh, this movie kind of had a lot of everything. I'm going to say this will probably be above 800. I'm going to go with 800 to 850 points. And anyways, yeah, so those are my initial thoughts on Delirium. Stay tuned for the Jolly Tally to see what happens and what my real thoughts were in terms of spoilers. But yeah, have you seen Delirium? What are your thoughts on it? And yeah, leave those down below. I'll get back to you. And other than that, this is Tanner Leeser for The King in Giallo, and if nothing else, I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.
Dico, non stavo fuggendo. E invece mi stavo rialzando dal mio bisogno. E la prova sta ancora lì sul prato, se non l'avete acceccata.